Welcome back. Today, I am super excited to have two of our partners with us today. Today, I have Sarah Filipiac with Win Every Interview. We also have Dawnell Kelly. Oxley Help has been tremendous in getting us through some of our programs. Check out what they are doing, it's incredible. So, today, we are going to be talking about interviewing in this day and age, this climate. So my first question, and I'll go to you, Sarah, is what's different about now versus what we've seen even pre-pandemic?
Oh my goodness. It seems like the world has changed dramatically. So even I don't know, Donnell, if you've experienced this as well, but I'm seeing people that even just from a few months ago, just struggling to get the interview, let alone what they're going to say when they get to the interview. But how are they standing out amongst the sea of resumes that there are only a handful of jobs right now on those job boards? How in the world are they going to stand out in some type of compelling way to get just one of those golden tickets to get to the interview in the first place? It's really unbelievable when you think about the number of people that have gone through the mass layoffs over these past 12 to 18 months, the finite number of jobs that are available. The economy is starting to come back in terms of hiring confidence, but my goodness, it is a bloodbath out there. What's your experience?
Oh, that's so funny. So while I'm an entrepreneur, I'm also looking myself for a career with another nonprofit. And it's perfect timing because I have an interview coming up on Thursday. However, as a veteran, I have resources, right? So I was in this Hiring Heroes program, and it is a whole different landscape. So what I'm learning is you need personal branding now. You need to have a certain formatted cover letter. You should have a templated separate document for references only. There are so many tiny little factors as opposed to 20 years ago, you pop into the ice cream shop and you're like, hey, how's it going? Can I fill out an application? You sit down with your clipboard,
Going into the newspaper to look at search ads, but I guess that was about 20 years ago now, admittedly. But you're so spot on. It is not just about personal brand. One of the things that I'm educating people on is how are you starting to create opportunities so you're not reliant on those job boards? How are you influencing your way into some of these conversations? How are you demonstrating your thought leadership so that when people do stumble upon your LinkedIn profile, you're differentiated? Because let's face it, your LinkedIn, it's not really the digital resume that I think it was originally intended to be. It is now your virtual sales page. And if you are not demonstrating and positioning yourself as that thought leader, unfortunately, there's going to be someone that you're competing with that is leveraging their platform that way. They're eventually going to go to your LinkedIn and see who's this person all about, and do I get the same kind of confidence that this person is not just competent, but autonomous, and they can truly navigate all of the challenges that we're looking for them to resolve in short order. Because I think that that's the biggest change in this job market is employers are no longer looking at someone to come in, eventually get them up to speed, invest in them long term. Unfortunately, this day and age, it is what can you do? What can you deliver quickly? How have you positioned yourself to be able to deliver in very short order on the very real problems and challenges that they're facing? Because let's face it, the level of the threshold for patience this day and age, it's just not there anymore.
And it's very similar. So you have a brand on what you're doing as a contractor or a business owner. Then you have a brand for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So there's definitely an overlap with being a salesman in your own right. So it's not just I'm qualified. It's like you're qualified is like the bare minimum. Now, you connect? Do you collaborate? And so one thing that I learned too is video is so important now. So let's say you send in a resume, a cover letter, and then maybe I'll throw in a link to like an intro video introducing myself and why I want to be connected to them specifically. So you can't just do that copy and paste video anymore either.
What you're saying, though, is exactly right. We are now living in a world where it's not just two-dimensional media. We are in this rapidly changing digital age, and just the psychological nature alone tells us that we are drawn to stimuli for less than about 3 to 4 seconds. And if something doesn't captivate us within those first few moments, forget it. Logic might make someone think, but it's truly the emotional component, the evocative component that makes someone act. And that's exactly what you're saying, Dawnell, is by humanizing your brand by bringing it into the 3-dimensional, maybe even 4-dimensional if possible, where you start to not only demonstrate your subject matter expertise, but really show the passion and conviction behind what it is that you stand for and why you want to align that to a company's mission. I think that's really what is helping those fast track themselves into opportunities, is when you're showing that you're not just someone that is competent and qualified, but that you are approachable, you are bought into their mission, vision, and purpose. You are an effective team leader. You're a great communicator. And now this is someone worth putting their stamp of approval on, so you can have those internal advocates that are working on your behalf to influence your way in. But you're so spot on when you talk about solopreneurship. It's one of the things I talk about in this particular work, is you have to think of what you do this day and age as like you are an entrepreneur. You're the CEO of your own career. And you're basically educating companies on your unique value offering that you're going to lend to them for a period of time, knowing full well that they're likely, it's going to be probably a short-term relationship. Let's just call it what it is this day and age. Are people retiring from that same company that they started at anymore? Unfortunately not. So we need to start thinking strategically about, what does this role mean for me today? How am I going to ensure that not only am I successfully winning the job, how am I going to operationalize and ensure that I'm delivering in the capacity that they're expecting of me? Because let's face it, if I'm not delivering in short order, I'm going to be churned once again. So we need to make sure that as job seekers, we are in a position of strength. We are taking our power back. We know how to navigate the complexity of any given situation that we find ourselves in, right? And
Yes.
how are we going to make an awful lot of something out of nothing?
Another important thing too that I did today in a preliminary interview, from my point of view, I always speak from a standpoint of I think you should ask why they're hiring. That's what I do. But I don't say it like that. I just say, hey, is there anything I should be aware of? Is there like a high rate of burnout? Anything I can avoid? Just curious as to why you're hiring. And that helps flesh out if you will resonate with them too. Because maybe there's a common trap that if you're a mom, this won't work for you. Then you need to know that before you waste both of your time. And then the second thing I was going to mention was the networking piece. So like you said, LinkedIn is your brand, but also your network, right? Use that network and ask them for support. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things I'm telling job seekers right now is, if you are relying on job boards, unfortunately, there's a 0.002% chance that you're actually going to get called back on that particular opportunity. It's all about, how do you build internal advocates? How do you influence your way in by aligning yourself to the opportunities that you're seeking? How do you leverage your network to build those strategic partnerships and inroads? And do some informal interviews, like do some of that scouting before you get to the interview. So that way, not only is that person advocating for you because they're eager to collect the internal referral fee, but on top of that, they're advocating for a talent that they know, like, and trust. They have sampled a little bit of your work, and now you have something of value to bring to the interview, because you can say, hey, I actually met with Susie last week. I've got to tell you, she has some really compelling insights as to why she loves working here. Curious about your vantage point. It shows that you've already done your due diligence as well. So it ingratiates good business all the way around, right?
Influence your way in. Is that your tagline? That's incredible. I love that.
I probably should have put that somewhere.
Mhm.
It's the name of one of the modules that I teach. It's lesson number 5.
Nice.
But influence your way in. Yeah, I probably
That's
should
like applicable everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
key. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love your website too, Sarah. I both of you have great websites. Let's shift gears for this last little bit that we have and answer the final question that I have for both of you, because you've talked about some great things here. Right now, if you were going to pick 2 things that you were going to tell someone who is a new job seeker, what are 2 things that you would say, you need to do this today?
You need to know you first. What are your values? What's your mission? What's your purpose? What are you really driven to do? Because it doesn't matter if you have the perfect job if it's not perfect for you. So lean into who you are, not who you should be. Otherwise, nothing's going to matter. So that's number 1. And number 2, approach everything with an open, curious mind, because again, we are humans first, people first. And so if you find a job description that leaps out at you, great, but don't just already start envisioning in your head that you have it and you can't wait. Like, take each step, one step at a time, and make sure it's like a relationship. Like, hey, nice to meet you. You want to get married? Like, no, what? Stop it. Right?
I don't know, Dawnell. It works on Married at First Sight.
Oh,
Some of
no.
those work.
All right. We'll see what happens.
Okay, admittedly, about only 7% of the couples make it. Okay,
Yeah,
it's still good
exactly.
TV. You're so spot
Okay,
on.
I'd watch a TV show on that. Okay, so if you start something like that, I would watch it.
Cool.
Hired at First Sight and see what happens.
Yeah,
Oh, I love
there
that.
we go.
Challenge accepted. Absolutely.
Boom.
God, you brought up some really great stuff, Dawnell. If I were to give only two, Jason, only two,
Only two? If
only
you have
two,
3,
dang.
4, okay.
And I've got a few things that, just because this is a totally different ball game than anything we've ever seen before,
Absolutely.
there's so many things that you actually need to be cognizant of. But if I had to dial it into just two, the very first thing I'm going to say is know your value story. Your value story is, what is it that is unique to you, your subject matter expertise, that no other candidate is going to be able to hold a candle to you on, because you are there to influence the narrative. Essentially, Dawnell, you said perfectly. Sales is essentially a life skill. I don't care who you are. If I'm a mom and I'm selling my toddler to eat her green beans tonight, I am influencing her to do something that she may or may not want to do, right? Everything about sales is just effective communication, right? And being able to prove your way of thinking and why it should align to something collaborative. So the ability to discern your value story and influence what the criteria is as to what they're hiring for. Did you know that the average candidate right now only fits 60% of the criteria on the job description? That not only tells you that employers are probably grossly inept at being able to discern what's truly valuable in this role in particular, but also says it's highly malleable. That means that they're not necessarily the subject matter experts in this particular thing they're looking to solve for. Let's face it, if they had all the answers, the role probably wouldn't be open. They probably would have staffed it already internally. That means that there's a problem that needs to be solved through a conduit that they don't currently have an internal resource for. So that means if I'm a subject matter expert, it's my job to be able to say, this is exactly who I am. This is my take on a given issue. This is how I would resolve it. And just curious, I noticed in the job description you mentioned X, Y, or Z is, really important to you, but I'm curious, have you considered X prime, Y prime, Z prime instead as an alternative? Because I feel like that might actually resolve the challenge a little bit better. So that's number one, is know exactly who you are, what your win zone is, and how that stacks up. Compare and contrast it to not only the job description, but the other candidates in the marketplace, because you're going to need a bulletproof answer on any objection that they field in your direction. So that's number one, know thyself. Number two, I'm going to say that it's not enough to understand your scope of work as it relates to you and what you're looking to solve for. If someone's taking their time out of their busy day to interview you, that means that they have a stake in whatever it is that you bring to the table. They are invested in what it is that you're going to bring and its implications on their work product. So when you are aligning vantage points, you have to tell that value story through the unique lens of, how does this person perceive value? What are the implications on this person's work product? How is this person ultimately going to look like a superhero to their boss, to their stakeholders, right? So understanding that unique lens, where you understand the micro focus of your individual scope of work, but the macro implications as it relates to the company at large, the external stakeholders. So when you can understand how to tell that value story unique to each of the lenses that you need to educate of your candidacy across the process, you're essentially tailoring that sales narrative to each of the individuals that are going to have a voice in whether or not you come aboard.
Awesome. Awesome. Today on Time to Change, we have been talking about interviewing in this climate. And you've heard from Dawnell Kelly and Sarah Filipiac. Thank you so much for being here today. A big round of applause